there's no way that you can mess up the guest name if you just don't introduce them. What's up, everybody? It's Aaron, back from the Ones Ready podcast. It's me, it's Trent, it's Nate from Valhalla Training Fit, the man, the myth, the legend, the only Green Beret teaching anything tactical in and around Oregon. I don't know if that's true. Nate, thanks for coming on, dude. What's up, man?
That is true, but yeah, I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Love the videos. Love what you're doing. Love everything that you got. Like the video of the Aspect War stereotypes, freaking hilarious. Laugh my balls off at that thing. So well done. Tell the people, man, who you are. You know, what's your story and how you find yourself to being one of those green-hatted folks from the Army.
Yeah. So just quick background. Grew up in Oregon. Pretty easy backstory when it comes to why I joined the military. Pretty legacied family. So my grandpa was in the 82nd, jumped into Normandy on D-Day. Dad was a Green Beret in Vietnam. So kind of like the easy pathway, obvious pathway. So that's how I ended up going to become a Green Beret. Well, I went to the Q course in 2013. So I was in the regiment for a little over 10 years. And just retired in October. So here I am. Another content creating soft guy, just like the rest of us. So,
yeah, you know what we need more white ex soft dudes with podcasts.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Tattooed, bearded white dudes with a podcast. Perfect.
So, yeah, exactly. So it was a foregone conclusion that you were going to get in, you were going to do something in the service. What drew you to being a Green Beret versus all the other stuff? Because obviously we're biased to the Air Force over here on this side of the fence, but there's a story for everybody, and maybe you had some legal issues, or maybe you just got smart. Like, how did you tie yourself to the Army?
I mean, you're not far off. No legal issues. It was more of, I had just flunked out of college from partying too much. And again, Dad was a Green Beret, and honestly, I don't know how. So, just one morning, sort of woke up, and also I was a nightclub DJ before I joined the military as well. So,
wait, hold on. You're not. If you think you're just gonna fly right by, a nightclub DJ.
So everybody that worked with me in first group knows, because I used to DJ like all the balls and we have beach parties and do stuff like that. But yeah, so. That's kind of how I dropped out of college too at the same time, right? As you can imagine what
oddly enough,
you can imagine what that lifestyle entails. I'm not gonna get into it. But I woke up one morning after like 3-4 years straight of that and was like, man, I gotta something inside me. It was weird. That was just like, I'm meant for something bigger than this. And I was also the black sheep of the family, very successful family. Dad, Green Beret, became a politician, lawyer for 40 years, mom, the school administrator, my sister, super successful accountant, and then there was me, shithead nightclub DJ, right? So it was also sort of
had to be Christmas had to be terrible for you,
so,
huh?
You imagine
the politician, the lawyer, and then look, little Nate. Are you still playing your little music for your little clubs, Nate?
Well,
Mom.
That's exactly how it was, and you can imagine how proud my dad was, being a guy like us, right? So, I woke up one morning and was like, hey, I want to be a Green Beret, I guess. I don't know. I like looking back on it now, where I was there in life, like why I thought that was possible is like kind of insanity. But I pulled it off. So made it through the course first try. And yeah, that's obviously history now. But so, I think like a lot of us, it's funny to say backgrounds. A lot of us have some type of background like that. It's never normally the guy who's like, yeah, I had a perfect career and I graduated college like summa cum laude and then just decided I wanted to do something tonight. It's never that, It's always like we're shitheads. Kind of a last, maybe not for you guys in the Air Force. Right. A lot of us are like shitheads at the last resort,
Well, the legacy thing with your dad really interests me, because this wasn't your first choice. You weren't going to it's not like you grew up and at least it doesn't sound like you grew up an Army brat. You're just like, oh, I'm doing this. This is the thing. It sounds like you needed to find your way there. How supportive were your parents when you were finally like, all right, the DJ thing, it ain't working, dude. I'm going to go to the Green Beret. What'd your dad say?
Did
you finally get that hug?
Now, let me get it. Yeah, I'm like, now I'm the prize child, right? But,
right.
It wasn't that I was like a total shithead. Like I was a collegiate athlete. You know what I mean? Like I was fairly successful, and then sort of college is where I fucking spun off the rails. But I think that part of it, was wanting to accomplish something that, again, like growing up with a family and a dad who's so successful, like I always had in my brain that I was going to do something important and be successful. But it was, I just found myself like, well, I was going to go to college, be a college athlete. And like, that just didn't work for me. There was like for me, there was no purpose there. I think that's what caused me to kind of like spiral off the rails. And the military really was like a savior for me. Like it gave me the mental discipline I needed, gave me purpose, like to become a Green Beret. That became my new purpose. Like I'm a very purpose-based person even today, like with all my issues from PTSD and combat and all that. If I have purpose, like I'm good. But the second like I don't have purpose, like back when I was still in, maybe I got set in an admin position after 8 years on a team, right? And that's when for me, like things start like kind of spiraling out of control again. So yeah, I think that's like a big part of it was just sort of that inner purpose. I finally had found a purpose, and that's when I finally started to find real success.
Yeah, for sure. So you got through the Q course. It was no big deal. Did you know right away you were like, hey, I'm going to track Echo and everything's going to be cool, or what?
So no, I wouldn't say I made it through the Q course. No big deal. Right. No, I don't think anybody does. I had multiple injuries. I broke my foot at one point. I fractured my tibia at another point. So I had some setbacks there, but I was fortunate that I did make it through the whole course first time. Sorry, take that gum out. Sorry, what was the question?
It's okay. It's okay. Between the gum, the constant moving, and the attention span, this is going to be great. They're really
it's early. I'm still waking up.
Watch the video, everybody.
Yeah, I'm still waking up. Sorry. Well, I'll get it together.
My man's pinging off 600 milligrams of caffeine and some Zen, just out here living his life. No, so did you think that you were going to track to 18 Echo? I know.
Oh, okay.
18 Echo.
No, my dad was a Charlie, and actually, so the way it works in the Q course is when you go to selection, they give you a wish list. So you put down your MOS you want in order from 1 to 4. So I put 18 Charlie, 18 Bravo, 18 Echo, then Delta last. And I put Delta last because I went to school initially for pre-med, and just immediately 1 year out was like, I'm not going to be a doctor. So I already knew I didn't want to do medicine. And then also you do a wish list for your language. And really you do that so you can try to get what group you want, since we're like each group is language based. So I put 18 Charlie, and then I put 4 Asian languages because I wanted to go to JDLM. Because I'm from Oregon. My family will, either in Washington or Oregon. But and so I just got told, I got my third choice. Part of it was my GT score was so high, so people think I'm dumb, but I actually have really high intelligence score. So the military thought, let's give this guy 18 Echo, and that's just kind of the way it worked out. So it definitely wasn't necessarily what I wanted, and I hated the job the entire time. The radio portion of it, I absolutely hated it. Everybody knows that works with me. It's kind of begrudgingly did the radio portion of it because I had to.
Right. Which is kind of weird for a communications sergeant, but hey, I guess to each their own, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked it at the start, but like after the 800th time your 18 Bravo asks you to load the radio or fix his crypto.
I dropped my fill, bro. Like, you should, it's a radio. Like, I know this is my job, but you should be able to fix this. Like, do you do self-aid buddy care? You know how to work a tourniquet. Okay. So you don't go to the 18 Delta for everything. Is there any way that you guys could figure out how to fill your own radios?
The best part of that is I would always take my weapon to my 18 Bravo. Like if it malfunctioned on the range, like just as a joke, I would always just walk to the 18 Bravo and be like, I need you to fix this malfunction. I don't know how to fix it. And if they say shit, I'd be like, all right, next time your fucking radio's down, don't ask me to fix it because this is a remedial task.
Don't come to me for your remedial fix. There are parts about the job though that not everybody digs. Like not everybody being a PJ. There's tons of PJs that don't dig medicine. They just like the overall job, and they're like, hey, all said and done, really medicine is a smaller part of the job than some of these other things. So how did you get used to just dealing with the fact that you didn't like radios and still finding fulfillment in your job as a communications guy?
Yeah. Well, the best part about it during global war on terror, obviously, and the way we do it is like everyone's an operator, shooter first, an operator first. Your MOS is second, regardless of what it is. And so the global war on terror, as you know, like radio communication is not hard. Like you can send whatever signals you want in the air. Nobody's going to RFDF you. So it was just loading 152 radios, before missions. And that was like, and then fixing guys' radios on target. that was like the extent of the MOS job in combat. So it wasn't that much to deal with. It was really once Afghanistan ended, and then we started getting all the good ideas of how we need to have new communication systems going into China, Taiwan. That's when it was like, oh god, I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to lead any of this.
Right. When you start talking about like high frequency over the comm sort of shots and all that other stuff that gets, we would have controllers out back, just across base from you guys. So obviously we'd be over, the McCord side of base, which we call the light side. And then on the JBLM side, we call that the dark side.
Yeah.
So that's true. Remember in The Lion King where he's like, oh, Simba, everything that light touches, and we look down there like, well, what's the dark part? We're like, well, that's North Fort Lewis. You're not allowed to go there. You should never go there for anything.
Yeah, that's true.
We'd be setting stuff. Guys would have stuff strung out over, wire fences and putting shots off to the top of Mount Rainier and all that other stuff. It gets super wonky super quickly when you start getting into that realm.
Yeah, it does. The HF realm is super difficult. And that's our qualification course, the MOS phase. The majority of it is that. And then it's funny, like as soon as I got to a team, I don't think I ever touched an HF radio for the next 8 years. I always get and then by like 3-4 years in, training exercises, commanders would like ask if we could use it. And I would just be like, no. Mainly because I forgot how to use it. And I don't want to make a fool out of myself. But like, also, we're not going to use this when we go to Afghanistan. And that's all we were doing is just taking it out, So like, why am I going to waste my time doing this? Just because you want to show the company commander we did something cool? Nah, man.
Right. Well, it's the new shiny toy, and everybody's like, "Oh, check this out! Look how we're able to use it." And you're like, "Listen, man, we're getting like 40% capability out of a thing that takes 90% of our attention. What are we doing? Is this that important?"
Yeah.
So you ended up tracking for some Asian languages. You wanted to go up to JBLM. Obviously, it was close to home. When you showed up on team, you finally started like getting stuff together. Like, what was it like when you showed up on team?
Yeah. So depending on what sergeant major is in charge of your company at the time. Depends on whether you go. We have our ODAs, A teams, which is your typical operational team, but we also have what's called a B team, which is each company has one. I don't know if you guys have something like this, but it's backside administration support for all the line ODAs. And depending on your sergeant major, they'll either think that the brand new guys need to go to the B team for a year so that they can get experience, or some sergeant majors will think you need to go to a line unit first to get the experience. The sergeant major in charge when I showed up was one that said you go straight to a team, which was awesome. So I showed up with one of my buddies who I went all the way through the qualification course. We were both 18 Echoes, both went to JBLM, both of them going to the same company, walk into the company at the same time. He goes in the sergeant major's office first, comes out, and it was like, "Oh, dude, I'm going to the Halo team." And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, there's slots on the Halo team, yeah." And so I walk in, sit down, and sergeant major's super cool, which obviously you know how nervous you are your first day in the company. And he's like, he looks up at this whiteboard, right? And it's the ODA with everybody's roster, top to bottom. And he points to the board at the one open 18 Echo slot on all the teams. And he goes, "Can you swim?" And I was like, just immediately.
Oh, no.
Immediately, I was like,
team, here I come.
Yeah, and it was the one team. I didn't dislike the water, but like I knew what dive school entailed, and I was like, anything but a dive team. And so I was like, well, but I wanted to go to a team, right? So I was like, yep. And he was like, okay, well, you're going to the dive team. I was like, great.
You might as well just go ahead and get those UDTs, report to Soldiers Fieldhouse for pre-dive, baby, because you're gonna be spending a lot of time at Soldiers Fieldhouse in that 13-meter pool.
In American Lake, both, man. And the sound.
American Lake is absolute dog shit.
Yeah,
it's the absolute worst.
So that was my first day in, which was awesome to like go straight to a team, and it worked out for the best. Like the team turned out to be like the best team in the battalion. We got the premier missions in Afghanistan. I got super lucky that I ended up on the team that I did, but initially it was like, oh, this is the absolute worst. And the water started immediately, right? So it was, that took me, and I did not, it took me, I went to pre-dive 3 times. So it wasn't like I
went to pre-dive 3 times,
which is I got hurt. I tore my meniscus and my MCL in the first one, so it is what it is. But it took me a while to learn the events. So yeah, I was I didn't ever quit, but it was a struggle, drown, flop, fish water the entire time, until I learned the events. Then I was fine.
Yeah. Did you do any prep on your own before pre-dive? Were you Googling stuff to be like, hey, what's this event? Or looking at videos? Like, how'd you prepare for it?
No. So the first time I went to pre-dive, it was like, there was one coming up like a week after I got to the team, and my team, only the team sergeant was back. The team was coming back from a deployment. So there was like no train up. I just went straight into it. Had no idea. I didn't know what any of the events were. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Getting injured, I think probably maybe saved me a little bit, because then, I was able to recover. And then I got to train up with my team and like have them walk me through all the techniques to like, how to like, how it is. Like once you learn the techniques to all the events, you're fine. But if you don't know the techniques, and it's just like, oh God, this is bad.
Right. And that's, to speak to our attrition rate, to speak to how many people like find their way out in the early part of our pipeline, it's because a lot of people will go in and they quite frankly don't know the tips and the tricks and the techniques. That's why we're here to try to be like, hey, these are the events. They're really not that hard. You can actually train them. And then when you take away kind of the unknown or unknowable nature of those events, magically you're like, oh, these really aren't that hard. Like, I remember, Ditch and Don, right when we first started doing ditch.
It's horrible.
Back, yeah, right. But like by the as soon as I figured I had a friend that could do it really quickly, like you'd have to tread, standard dive school shit. You'd have to tread on the water, put your hands up. They'd say go. You go down, you arrange your gear, you come back up, and then you go down, put it back on, and come back up. My friend got so efficient at it, he could do it in like 10 seconds. It was like a 10-second breath hold for him. Like straight down, front flip, land on his butt. Half of his fins were already off. Puts mask underneath, comes up, perfect every time. And it would infuriate the instructor.
Yeah.
It was 10 seconds.
Right.
And then putting it on, it was maybe 20 seconds because he would go down there and kind of like take his time. But he was like, anybody can hold their breath for 20 seconds. What's the big deal? And he was like, even if you're, he's like, maybe I'm just like really talented at this. Maybe it takes you 20 seconds because I'm twice as good as you. He's like, can you hold your breath for 10 seconds? And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, then you can do this event. And I was like, oh, wow. I guess I never thought of it like that. As you went to dive school, how do you feel that the pre-dive and your training set you up for dive school? And you got there, did you feel prepared, or were you like, oh crap, I'm in the game now?
No, well, I didn't. So here's the thing: I didn't ever get to go to dive school. I did 3.5 years on the dive team, and there's
you're like one of our controller students. How cute! Oh, you spent all this time getting selected to go to no dive school. Funny, controllers in your face.
Yeah, the way it worked. So I spent 3.5 years on the dive team, which was awesome, and we had multiple guys on the team in the same spot as me, but because of Afghanistan and the way it was working, my first year on the team, and again, I got hurt to go to the first one. So when the next one was coming around, we were in our pre-mission train-up window, and our company sergeant major was like, look, combat takes precedence over every IMTO to MPhil platform. Halo school, dive school, you guys aren't going to that. So yeah, came back from that Afghanistan trip. Ended up having to have surgery on both my knees from injuries on that rotation. Back to back, passed, and then went on another deployment. Came back, surgery again, and then that's when, I think that's like that was like 3.5 years later at that point. And then I went to the B team for a little bit to recover, and by the time I was recovered, they had filled the 18 echo slot on the dive team when I was supposed to go to dive school, and then I just went to a mountain team instead. So I did 3 dives 3 times to not even get to and by that point, man, I was like ready then. Dude, I could crush every event. It was like every event was super easy, and it was like by that point, then it was like, oh, sorry, you're going to a mountain team, which was fun, cool, but it's like, okay, great. But yeah, it was just kind of at the way it worked at the time. The command team was not sending any guys in my company at all. It was because war was the precedent. So yeah, I spent a lot of time in the water and never get the bubble, which is probably like my biggest military regret of not being able to do that. So then I ended up on a Halo team shortly after for the rest of my career. That's way more fun anyway. So it worked out.
And jumping's way more fun. Yeah, objectively, jumping is way more fun than diving. And I'll be honest with you, like the whole, I had, those things in my career as well, where I looked back and I was like, I really, I wish that I would have went up and at least tried to assess for the tier 1 unit, right? Like just
that too, yeah.
hey man, like let's see what happens. I don't know if I would make it. I don't know if I have the minerals that they're looking for, but I'd like to test myself against that crucible. Like that's kind of like the same thing for dive with you, right? Like, man,
Well,
I feel like I was prepared, ready to go.
100%. And there's another guy on my team actually had the same thing happen. Same Afghanistan trip. He tore his patella tendon in half, like literally snapped in half, kneecap up in his quad. And the same thing happened to him where he spent the entire time on the side team and never got to go. But, you know, it's funny you say that because I get asked that all the time. Like, would you ever consider going to Delta selection, right? Because for us, that's like the normal next step for guys who want to take it, for SF guys.
Right.
And kind of the same thing. By the time, unfortunately, like by the time I was ready, I was 4 knee surgeries deep. And it was kind of like, married, 2 kids. It was like, dude, is this the time for me to do this? Probably. That time's probably passed. So, and, you know, I don't know if I would have, you know, you never know. Whoops, that tier 1. The tier 1 stuff, you never know. I watched some of the guys who I thought were like the baddest operators on the planet, like go and be non-selects. So you're just like, oh, 100%, that guy. And then I've had buddies where I was like, well, I've got 4 former teammates over there, all great dudes, but like some of them, you're like, really, he made it? And
yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy. Yeah. It happens with our tier 1 unit too. Like I'd have, you know, as a supervisor, as a guy that had, like when I was a team sergeant, and when I, you know, further up, when I was the ops soup or the ops enlisted dude, you know, people would ask to go to this thing. And, you know, there's always this weird thing where people are like, oh, I do think you're going to make it, so I'm going to push your packet, or I don't think you're going to make it, so I'm going to like have a talk with you. I was never that second guy. I was always like, hey, not only do I not know what it takes to go up there, but I had the same exact experience as you did. I'd see guys that I'm like, oh, it's a shoo-in. This guy's going to go crush it. He's going to get picked up right away. There's no, like, he's, you know, the best PJ that I've seen to our tier 1 unit out in North Carolina. I'm like, all right, he's going to get picked up. And then he wouldn't. And other people would go and they get picked up. And I'd be like, I don't even know. But that actually like solidified. I was like, I don't know what they're looking for. I don't know what the process looks like. I'm the worst person to ask. So when people were like, hey, should I go to the tier 1 unit? I'm like, I don't know. You should talk to somebody that worked there. I honestly can't tell you either way. We had a couple PJs that went over and ended up making the CAG selection at one point or another, which was cool. And they've been there ever since. So that's tight too. But yeah, the tier 1 question always cracks me up. I'm like, man, it's a completely different job. Like people think like, oh, what's the natural progression? You're just going to be, you know, a rescue PJ, you'll hit an STS and then you'll go up to the tier 1 unit. People don't understand like what it's its own animal. It's its own life. And a lot of that stuff rolls into it. Yeah, it'd be cool to be an assaulter, you know, your entire career. Got it. That sounds really fun. It's also not that fun to be on alert your entire year and never being able to leave the small bubble of North Carolina. You know, it's like the North Carolina Air National Guard that works, you know, for our boys up there. Like you're just there all the time. Living.
Yeah. I've got a close friend that spent probably 15 years in Delta. And at one point he told me at one point in a 2-year span, this was earlier in the war, he saw his family. I think he was home for a total of 7 days, and it was not a cumulative 7 straight days. It was a day here, gone 4 months, a day back. So that's the other side of it too. It's like if you've got family and kids and stuff, which guys can do it, you know how that is, but it's our op tempo's bad enough. For those guys, you're right. And it's like, it's just all year round. You're just either training, deployed, or ready to deploy in the way their cycles work. But anyway.
And if you think about it, anytime the flag goes up, that's what it is. But there you go. So as you got to, you know, you're at JBLM, you're finally cutting your teeth. You finally, like figure it out. I'm going to take you back to that first deployment, man. When that first deployment hit, when you were ready to, like, no kidding, step off into what feels like another world. Anytime you're deployed, you step off that plane and you're like, oh my God, this is completely different. How did that first deployment go for you? And was all the training that you did up until then, were you like, oh, okay, tight, no, this is the game, I'm ready? Or was it completely new?
So the way it works in SF, we have deployments that are to foreign countries, like throughout Asia, right? As a training exercise sort of deployments. So I'd done, I think, 2 of those before my first combat deployment. And yeah, I mean, we do a huge train up cycles, usually like 6 to 9 months. And again, the team I went with was like a super stacked team. We had a bunch of dudes who had 4 or 5 combat deployments. We had 2 18 Deltas. The junior 18 Delta had been on the ODA for 6 years. And the senior 18 Delta had even more team time than that. I ended up working the rest of my career with him. But guys, you know, you're working with guys who've been in and fighting the global war on terror since like 2006. So I felt confident in that, that I was trained up. But like, I think you never, and the combat deployment we ended up having, my first one was super, super kinetic. You know, I've told stories before. We were in multiple near ambushes, a lot of kinetic gunfights in that deployment. So, and started early in the deployment. So I think you always like feel like you're ready until like, funny story of the first time I stepped off a 160th helicopter, like on target, on objective, and the first compound is like 10 feet in front of my face. That's like a real surreal moment of like, oh shit, you're right. I'm in a whole different universe right now. You know what I mean? But you know, we did a ton of missions on that deployment too. So, and with as much combat and gunfighting we got into on that deployment, it kind of sort of fast tracked my experience level for one deployment, if that makes sense. You know, because there's deployments where you can, you know, maybe get in one firefight your whole deployment. And I think it was my third mission, or maybe third or fourth mission, and we were in a near ambush from 10 meters against in an open field against 10 Taliban insurgents in a defensive fighting position. So it was like, you know, learn quick, because, you know, this shit's real. And the way we operate, you know, we got 12 SF guys on the ground, and we're split up in 4 different elements. So, well, at the time we got near ambush, we had 2 elements with us, but there's 4, maybe 5 Americans on the ground. So, and it turned out being, you know, that all of our Afghans just laid down and wouldn't fight, well, basically just return fire, but wouldn't move. So it turned into, you know, 4 or 5 USSF guys trying to fight through a near ambush. So, and we got in near ambush twice on this objective. That was just the first time. But yeah, so it was, that first deployment was like reality check real fast. Of like, you're in war and it's real, you know?
Right. So as you got home after that first deployment, you hit a couple back-to-back. Would you hit 3 pretty much back-to-back while you were?
What's that?
You like deployments? Would you hit like 3 back-to-back while you were waiting? Like, you know, came back injured, you know, you ended up going to the B team and all that other stuff.
Yeah. So I came back, had to have surgeries, ended up going to a mountain team, deployed again pretty quickly after that. Came back, and then this was around 2020 at this point. My former 18 Delta, who I just mentioned when I was in the near ambush with, he became a team sergeant and took a Halo team out in Okinawa, and they were actually prepping to go to the next rotation to Afghanistan. And so I sort of weaseled my way into getting a slot out there. So I moved out to Japan and was stationed there for 3 years. And our Afghanistan rotation on that one was, let's see, when did Kabul fall? Let's see, 2021 sometime.
2021. Yeah.
So we were, 10th group was in Afghanistan at the time before that had happened, and we were supposed to rotate and take over. We had done our 6 to 9 month train up, and this was through COVID going into 2021. We basically are on pre-deployment leave, the 30-day pre-deployment leave. Beards are growing out, the whole 9. We ship our equipment into Afghanistan, so all our guns, everything, we're moving pre-deployed. It's like 2 weeks before we're going to ship out, and team sergeant gives us a call and says, "Hey, everybody's got to come to the team room. We got to talk." We had a whole SOTIF going, so 22 ODAs, and we were basically going to Bagram and Kabul to facilitate the withdrawal for the next 6 months. That was sort of the plan, and we get called off right before we're leaving. Like, literally, our equipment's in the country, and we get told no reason why, and it's just. Nobody knows why, but it's canceled. And like you saw, maybe a month later, we saw it all happen on TV. So I like to tell people, like, if you think there wasn't a better plan for Afghanistan, don't get fooled, because I was a part of it. And you were supposed to have 20 SF teams in Bagram and Kabul facilitating that, which the Taliban don't fight us. They see 12 or 24 guys that look like us show up, like, unless look, they got their asses kicked for 20 years. They pretty much gave up. So there's no way they would have ever even tried to take anything. They would have just waited it all out. And yeah, man. So that was going to be the next deployment, and we ended up basically having our stuff sent from Afghanistan to Australia as like a side deployment, and ended up doing that, which was a fun deployment. But yeah, pretty messed up, man. Like, you were about to have, like 300 SF dudes there, and instead we just let it fall and then send in a bunch of kids from the 82nd to get blown up on an airfield, man. So that's like one of the really like nice things for me, is it's like dudes like us were supposed to be there, and then we decided to just fucking throw it all away on a whim, and no one knows why. We were still never told why that decision was made. You just have to speculate on why. I think it was fear that if you had a bunch, a sort of SF guys, and they were going to try to pull this withdrawal, that we would kill people that actually tried to attack us.
Right.
Who knows, man?
How do you feel? So that's a pretty distinct perspective to have too, as a guy that felt like they there's some part of you that had to feel like you could go there and you could have made a positive benefit, and then to see how everything kind of like fleshed out. How did you feel like post that event? Like, did you still have some unfinished business, or I don't know the right way to say it?
It still pisses me off. Every time I talk about this, it pisses me off. For one, like, I'm sure you too, like, I lost fucking friends and teammates in that war.
Oh yeah.
So, and, we all sort of did, I'm sure, but like, so it's like, I spent a lot of time there. My family sacrificed a lot for all the time I spent there. You know what I mean? And for us to just throw it away like that. And not only that, like, I have, Afghan support dudes that worked with us, that I know their families all got slaughtered, because a few of them, we got a few out, but they were like, yeah, everybody in the family's dead. So these are guys that worked with us for, 20 years. So it's just, I don't know, man. I don't think I'm ever going to get over it. Right. And it's like all that combat, your buddies you lose. And it's like, then you look back and go, for what? Like, yeah, I get, like, the conflict itself. Should we have been there? Probably not eventually, but like, there was a better way to do it for sure. That could have like at least done it respectfully to all the veterans. And it's not just us in the SOS community. It's everyone that's served there for the last 20 years.
Right. And we've had, at this point, I think we've done like 6 or 7 HCI episodes. So, we have people that were working on the group chats back here trying to get special mission wing guys out. I knew, I had personal friends. The 2-2 was on the ground. They were doing the airfield retrograde in Bagram and HCI and whatever else. I had friends from the tier 1 unit that were on the ground. We've talked to pilots and whatever else.
Yeah.
And everybody, to a man and to a woman, have said the same thing. Like, we had the pilot that basically evacuated, the famous plane of 800 people shoved into the plane. Like, we had that pilot on. Courtney Vid was on.
Wow.
But everybody said the same thing. They were like, hey, you guys don't understand. Like, we had a plan for this. We had an idea of what we were going to do. We felt good about it.
Yep.
And then it just got turned off, and we didn't know why. And they just decided to do this other thing. And then we watched it fall.
Yep.
And it caused a lot of people. I think that's one of the reasons why we've taken, such an interest in getting those people's stories out there, is because people don't understand, like, how it is that you feel like I've been at Bagram. I've been in those buildings. I've been in those towers. I've walked around that place. It's weird to walk around. I've been to HKIA, flying in and out of the green zone to go pick people up, out of Kabul proper. And it's a weird thing to try to, like, I know those areas. Like, I know how to drive from Bagram to HKIA. Like, I know what that road looks like.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think, like, hey man, we watch this whole thing fall, and people assume, oh, is this chaos thing that had to happen the way that it did, and it sucked, but that's what it was. And man, that ain't the case, man.
And that's, here's the thing. I've learned through my own family, a very, very politically stratified family, that's people want to believe that, right? Even I have one of my relatives that's 100% how she feels. There's nothing better that could have been done. This is the way it had to happen. And I've literally had my mom and dad be like, actually, your nephew literally was a part of the plan. And it was like, well, no, they're just lying to him about what they were actually, and that's a family member, right? So there's just people that, like, it doesn't matter how many of us come on that were firsthand experience to say they're not, nope, they don't want to hear it. It is what it is.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's the same. I talked to my dad about it. It was no different for him with Vietnam, right? They did the exact same thing. We just jumped ship and let the massacre of tons of Vietnamese that have worked with SF guys. That's how we got all the mutton guards that are over here now in America. But it's the same exact situation. We seem to be pretty good at doing this on repeat now in America.
Yeah, history may not repeat, but I'll tell you what, it rhymes.
Well, and
there's things that we can learn.
Here's the other thing now is it's like, especially as an SF guy, right? Our whole thing is like we embed with the native population and we go out and we fight with you, right? We force multiply your military. Well, then it really is a degrade on our capability now, because in the next conflict, what unit is going to be like, oh yeah, the Americans are here. Let's have them come fight with us. That way they can just bail on us a few years later and we just get slaughtered. So,
right. Yeah.
You know, because we kind of like have a track record of doing it now. You know, the second like a new administration comes in, it's like, oh, never mind, cut ties, and you know.
Yeah. Well, and you look at other countries, like China's got a 400-year plan and the 100-year plan. Like everybody else is like, oh, we'll just wait America out. What are we going to have to do? Deal with this for 8 years tops before they get somebody else?
We got a 2-year plan. That's when not as far as we look ahead.
Right. Yeah. Because that's as far as the calendars go out. That's as far as your JOPE's planning cycle.
With that, you know, I figured I'd ask you guys, because I get asked this all the time about, you know, I mentor a lot of guys that are coming up, want to join the military, and kind of the perspective of where you see the military headed. Obviously, retention's in the toilet, in SOF especially, like there's nobody signing up anymore. You see us actually turning that back around, or do you see this as sort of a degradation off the cliff? Because for me, I'm kind of becoming a little bit of a nihilist about it. But maybe we just need another war. I don't know. What's your guys' perspective on that?
Right. I'll tell you what, we talk about it often, obviously, because it's the space that we live in and we have the same conversations, just with different, smarter, better looking people.
Yeah.
For us, I am not quite black-pilled enough where I'm going to be truly nihilistic about anything. I'm not going to sit here and go, okay, well, this is the end. And, you know, whatever. Socrates was talking about how the next generation ends civilization, right?
That's
like,
true.
We've been talking about this forever. There is some truth, though. Like, I'll tell you what, recruiting and retention right now is terrible. When the pendulum swings too far and you piss off everybody that you're supposed to recruit inside of the United States military, the military is not indicative of the larger culture, I'll tell you, at least as far as demographics go. Right? Proportionally, people enlist into the military on values and not along lines of division that you wouldn't think. So core values, you know, and some of those other motivations are really what gets people in. When the pendulum has swung so far away that the populace of America, regardless of how they identify themselves with gender, race, sex, creed, whatever else, color, when they look at it and they can't recognize their own values, their own morals, their own ethics and culture ingrained into the military, and they see all of these things, like, it's really not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So as the pendulum is swinging back the other way, I think there's going to be natural backlash. I think the recruiting and retention things, it's due to a number of different things, not just, you know, distrust in American society or its institutions. You know, from our optic, at least, it looks like the pendulum is swinging back. Now, is it ever going to be, you know, people killing themselves hand over foot to try to, you know, literally like fighting with each other to get in, to get on the teams, to go down range? Like, man, I don't know. Also, I think at the end of 22 years, you know, much like you, man, I've actually been to combat, so I don't wish for another war.
Right.
Like I hear my friends say that, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about the war that's killed like 10 of my friends? Are you?
Yeah.
The guys that say this, I'm like, motherfucker, I seem to remember crying next to you at a funeral,
right,
about our friend that got killed in Afghanistan, and you're wishing for more of that, like because you want to go shoot somebody, or you like, oh, we need another war to get back to our morals and our cultures. Oh, do we? Is that what we need? Or maybe the people that did it can sit here and we can talk to the people that are about to go do it, and we go, hey, these are the pitfalls. These are what you need to avoid. These are the good things about it. These are the bad things about it. Which is obviously what I love. I love seeing you do it too, man. The fact that you'll take your time and talk to these young folks and explain to them, like, hey, man, I know it kind of looks bad right now. I know it looks like the military is woke and focusing on the wrong thing and doing the wrong, like constantly putting out dumb memos, and everybody in the military, everybody's social media is trash. I don't know why it is. These, like, the PAO is there a bigger loser in the world than
I know.
public affairs offices? Because they're fucking dorks.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Did you see did you see the Navy one the other day of the Navy commander like shooting a sniper rifle off of a boat and his optic
I did a whole reel.
His optic is backwards on the gun.
His dust cover's down. His face is right next to it. He's looking at a fucking dust cap that I think is on backwards. And even if the dust cap wasn't on, like it was the most, a guy is like physically holding him. He's shooting at water. Like, what are you doing? Like nobody vets these things. And it's funny. We have the conversation as well, because we like to say that we're the official, unofficial podcast of the United States Air Force. Nobody can tell us that we're not. Because you can say whatever you want today. You don't have to be true. You just have to say it loud. So you just have to declare it. But people, that we'll just trash PAO. We're like 3 idiots with a couple cameras and a microphone are doing better for your messaging than you are. Yeah. Can you get would you like some help? But they're like, no. You guys don't understand marketing, and you guys don't understand social media. And I'm like, I know. Okay, well, keep doing what you're doing. Then seems to be working. You guys get ratio. There's an entire organization that every time I watch to see them post, I'm like, you guys get ratioed on every post. Every single thing you put out, people just absolutely destroy. And this is a program with millions of dollars assigned to it. And you're just like, hey, did you know that you can just buy like a $1,500 camera and like $1,000 mic and they get a computer, and then you can just talk and you can just message people, and you don't have to do all this dumb shit that you're doing. But they don't seem to figure it out.
No, well, it's funny what you say about the war thing. I do feel the same way as you. However, I chased combat deployments my entire career.
Everybody did.
I literally moved my family, uphauled my family to another foreign country just so that I could get into the next rotation on the next scene. So it's one of those things. You're right. But the thing is, man, I have obviously, like all of us, significant PTSD, years of behavioral health. I talk about it now because I think it's important, right? And I've had very close friends, and 2 of my favorite teammates commit suicide over the last few years. So I think it's important to talk about, but it's one of those weird dichotomies where I don't want the next generation to have to fight a 20-year protracted war. However, at the same time, I fucking love doing it, which is kind of a little bit of psychosis thing, right? Like,
no, it totally
there's nothing quite like flying in on a 160th helicopter, like with my feet off the edge, looking over the target I'm about to go assault, right? And then getting in blowout gunfights. Adrenaline wise, there's nothing that's going to ever replace that. So it's one of those weird things, man. Like it's kind of like the Warriors mentality, where it's bad, right? And the negative effects it's having on you and everyone else. But it's kind of like the bottle, right? But it sure feels good while I'm drinking it. You know what I mean? So.
Dude, I took when I was in Vegas the first time. So I took 3 deployments in a row. We were the Christmas troop. We knew that we were going to deploy during the Christmas holiday every single time. So we hit 3 of these in a row. And I distinctly remember, I was getting hot for an assignment, and I looked at my DO at the time, who's a legend in the career field. He was a combat control. He's an enlisted combat controller, and then he was a STO. Now he's a CRO, and he's worked in some literally pushing the career field forward, probably due for a star sort of stuff. But he was my, he's the OPSO at the unit. And he looked at me, he was like, hey, Aaron, I gotta put you down. I'm not going to let you deploy 4 Christmases in a row. You've missed 3 Christmases in a row. And I looked at him, and this is one of my friends. I deployed with him. And I was like, BG, you can go fuck yourself. Yeah. You think you're deploying this troop without me? I was like, you think you're going to put my guys down range without me? Yeah. I was like, fuck you. And then I got orders, so I didn't get my 4th deployment, but my troop went 4 years in a row. So I kind of like it. It reminds me of 2 things as we're talking. Number one, it reminds me of being a parent. The second that you're a parent, you're allowed to be a hypocrite. Yeah. I look at my, I've got an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and I got a 4-month-old, right? Yep. I look at this.
That's okay.
Yeah. You want to talk about starting over? How about getting a vasectomy reversed in order to start over 10 years afterwards?
No. Anyway.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, my bad. Go ahead.
No, that's all good. But yeah, so you get to be a hypocrite. You get to look at the kids and go, no, listen, you shouldn't drink alcohol at all until you're 25. You shouldn't ingest anything that harms your brain until 25. I look at my son, thank goodness, my 16-year-old really got into Olympic weightlifting, really got in, like he just lifted at nationals this last week. But I look at my wife now and I look at her and I go, hey, my young man is not playing football. He's not getting CTE. He's not taking, I'm like, if he wants to do a combat sport, like he can do jujitsu, he can do some of these other individual sports, but as a parent, you get to be a hypocrite. And as a team sergeant, I distinctly remember being, 2000, this had to be 2006, 2007, being a young dude and just all I wanted was to deploy. That's all I gave a shit about.
Yeah.
And I had a team sergeant sit me down and he goes, hey man, let me tell you, as a guy that's been in a gunfight, like he was in the push to Fallujah, like he was in Iraq early.
Yeah.
When we first deployed, and he was like, let me tell you something about a gunfight. It's the last fucking place I ever want to be again.
Yeah.
Going and deploying and watching the horrors that you're not supposed to see as a human. It's he's like, I understand your motivation that we recruit people that want to do these things, but it's you get the luxury of being the guy that gets to sit down and go, hey, young man, and especially for you, it had to be crazy. That's the kind of the second point. That's the difference between our generation and kind of the Vietnam generation. And you've had the, I think the distinct privilege and also the problem of watching how they react. There's the classic Vietnam trope of, my dad went to Vietnam and never talked about it.
No, I was just gonna,
yeah.
I never heard a single war story from my dad until I graduated the qualification course. We were driving, he drove together from North Carolina to JBOM and finally to tell me some stories. Right. But until he had never said, like, he would tell me generalities of like maybe stories about outside of combat, outside of Vietnam, of things he was doing with buddies or teammates, but like never anything more. And actually, he, coming and moving back to Oregon, Eugene, Oregon is where he landed after Vietnam. That was like getting spit on in the airport, especially as a Green Beret, getting called a baby killer, like the whole nine.
Your dad was John Rambo,
and he wanted
to be left alone.
And he was told basically by everyone, like, put the beret away, never talk about it again, go into civilian life, like, and that's what he did until I actually made the decision to join. It's awesome now because now he found Special Forces Association. He's reunited with like 10, 15 of his Vietnam era teammates, but he put it away in the shelf, in the dresser, never talked about it again, really until I became one. And it was sort of a resurgence for him and refinding, himself in that way, which is cool. But you're right. That's much different from how things were. But I also I watched the PTSD side of it. I didn't know at the time, because looking back, my dad was a great dad, but man, he was fucking angry all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it as a kid. Now I'm like, 100% looking back, like I fight those same demons all the time with my kids, right? Or it's like, that's my PTSD is sort of in the temper, anger, and anxiety. I never had the depression state, thank God, but like those are sort of the two that I've dealt with. So now, but I've had help. I had behavior help and all these things. Like those guys had nothing.
Right.
It's just kind of like, figure it out.
Well, I think that's the difference between being a quiet professional and being a silent professional.
I love that. Right? I love that quote. People don't understand that.
No. And I'll tell you what, we get hit on it all the time. When we first started the project, I'm sure you got it too. I'm sure there's some Green Berets who are like, oh, what the fuck you doing? Whatever. Yeah. Man, being a silent professional damaged that whole generation of men.
Yep.
Because they didn't talk about it. They didn't ask for help about it. They didn't tell their stories, and it's weird for two dudes to get on a podcast and go, hey man, I got PTSD too. Hey man, I have problems regulating my anger as well. Like, man, I don't know what it is, but I went from, the depression early where I was like, woe is me. And I felt like I was really coming out of it. And then, it's manifested now into like, the littlest thing will make me murderously angry in bed. And I'm like, man, I want to tear this room down because I can't get this thing on my computer to get right. You know what I mean? But that's the difference between being a silent professional and a quiet professional. We can do this thing where we tell our stories but we won't be silent. Like the GWAT generation, these guys that are in our peer group that saw things that are unique. I'm not comparing it to Vietnam. I would never do that. They're distinct and stand on their own thing. But there's a lot of parallels and there's a lot of things that we're doing a little bit differently for good and bad, which feels like a great transition into Valhalla VFT. So you found a way to be of service. Did that happen when you were in? Did it start like, did the bug start in your head of like, I'm gonna this thing when you were in or what?
So this is kind of it's a weird thing, man. So I was right before I retired, year before I retired, I got both my shoulders completely reconstructed. So my biceps were torn off my labrum. So my biceps are attached to my military free fall accident. Basically like a motorcycle crash, tore everything out of both shoulders. Anyway, had both reconstructed. So I was kind of off, on doing the recovery, working into my retirement for about a year, doing a lot of woe is me, right? So I just come off almost 8 years on the team, and was like, what the hell am I going to do? Right. I'm going to go manage somebody's business like every other SF guy, right? Or get into cybersecurity, something I'm going to hate. And I was actually about 6 months before I retired, came down to see my parents and took my mom shooting.
I would yelled at when our you're perfect. We get shamed and yelled at when our guest audio goes off for like a second. We that a lot. So I'm trying to
let me get them in.
I'm trying to avoid the 75 comments where I have to talk to 15-year-old dorks about their opinion of our audio.
How'd that?
It's perfect.
He gives me a card and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know what this is. He's like, you need to call me. I don't think anything about it. Go back to work. My mom goes and takes a concealed handgun license class, and the same guy is there, right? And he tells her, you need to tell your son to call me. So now I'm like, okay, what the hell is this guy? So I call him. Turns out he's a regional director for the USCCA, which for those of you who know, it's a, self-defense firearms company. And he sort of walks me through the process of becoming a firearms instructor, all the certs I need to get. And so luckily he actually now is basically my partner. And do everything with him, like amazing dude. But had it not been for that chance encounter of him hearing me, and what it was he heard me say I'm a retired Green Beret, and obviously in this area for him, right, it's like ding ding ding, partnered instructor. This is the guy, right? So he makes money off of my students as well, right? So it wasn't completely altruistic on his part, but it was just a chance encounter with somebody being like, "Hey, take my card. You need to call me," and then he basically got me access and placement to the ranges down here, the gun stores, like everything before I even got down here. And then pretty much showed up, started teaching. And now within a year, I teach the local sheriff's department, the local SWAT team. So it sort of exploded from there, all while doing my master's degree at the University of Oregon. I'm like,
beautiful. Go Ducks.
Yeah, go Ducks. Like, busier than I was almost when I was in, but it's good because, like I said, I'm a purpose-based person, so I like being busy and having something I've got to do all the time. Helps me keep the demons out.
100%, brother. 100%. I'm the same way. I'm a military working dog. Unless I'm doing something that's actually getting, like being of service, man, I'll chew furniture and I'll poop on the floor. It's terrible. It's the whole thing. So what are the basics of your training, man? Because I love what you're doing. I don't think, some people are like, oh, we joked about it. Oh, the last thing we need is another person training these sort of basic survival skills.
Nah.
However, I completely disagree with that. Like, I am of a mindset, be like, no, like I said this thing to my wife and she made fun of me. She's like, you are so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I can't wait. I can't wait to start working out in the garage with the door open here in the neighborhood. Cause you start like people walk by at the same time. You start making friends. I was like, you know what? I can't wait. I can't wait till the first person in this neighborhood is like, hey man, I know that you like guns. I know that you shoot. You're obviously a retired dude. Like I see the bags in the thing. You want to go shoot with me?
Yeah.
Can't wait, baby, because we're going out. But what are the principles that you teach down there in Valhalla VFT?
So everything I teach, for the most part, I teach a bunch of different classes, most firearms, tactics related, trauma medicine courses, some commo courses begrudgingly. But the biggest thing is I teach from a practicality, real life gunfighting standpoint. Okay, so we're not doing run around competitive shooting like cool guy shit. Yes, some of it is cool guy, but everything is designed from a lens of like a two-way range, which means the bullets are coming back at you. So how we minimize our body exposure using cover, like all those things that are practical based for someone that is going to have to potentially defend themselves the fight of their life with a gun.
Right.
So that's like the focus. And then I have what I try to do in all my classes is bring in a co-instructor that's got expertise in something specific. So if it's trauma medicine, I try to bring in one of my buddies that's an 18 Delta to co-teach. If we're doing like a precision rifle class, I try to bring in one of my buddies who's a special forces sniper instructor, some things like that. So that's the biggest thing is sort of, and like you mentioned, you say people that say you shouldn't do that. Yeah, well, in this area, like I'm the only Green Beret from like, as far as I know, from Washington to Northern California, I'm the only one teaching and basically giving back this knowledge that the military gave me. And the best quote, and what really sort of got me turned on to doing it, because I went through what are all my teammates going to say, and what are people going to think that I'm doing this? Like
every day,
especially with the social media. But Mike Glover he was talking about this, and he had mentioned that people say the same thing. You shouldn't be teaching civilians. There's some Green Berets who've said that in the public space that have gotten sued out for that. But he said, I traveled around the world teaching other people's civilians how to defend themselves against the tyrannical government. Why would I not do that for American citizens? And then he said, we should be training civilians all of the time. And I heard that quote and I was like, as a Green Beret, I'm like, you're right. That's exactly what I did for all these other countries. Maybe I should do that for my own local community. So I'm giving back all this knowledge that the government built into me to my local community so that they can defend themselves. So that's really the gist of my company, is like transposing that knowledge onto my local community to make it a safer place. That's the whole deal. And then the social media side of things, I started my YouTube channel and my Instagram 1 year ago, but my YouTube about 7-8 months ago, just as basically like I'd never used social media really. I had a personal page with like 100 followers that I'd log into once every couple of years. So I knew I had to use social media for marketing for the business. And now it's taken on a whole thing of its own. My YouTube channel is almost 30,000 subscribers, in 8 months, which again, I just got on it, I'm always still just like, why do people even watch my videos? Right.
It's crazy.
Right? I just get on and like talk about life and stuff. And I try to do it. I think I'm one of the only ones that's doing it, at least on the SF side of the house, sort of in like a non-glorification way. So if you watch a lot of my videos, it's like, here's the reality of the backside of all this shit you're going to deal with, stuff we've talked about. Like your buddy's dying, your mental health issues, physically destroyed. Like, yes, the job's awesome, but there's a lot of downside to it too. So I try to, be a good representation of what it means to be a Green Beret, but also, not do it from a Hollywood perspective. So that's really what.
Did you find that getting a little space from the military, getting a little space from the Beret, have you found that it actually made you like the Beret more often and like having those conversations more often with people that are about to go try and do it?
Oh, 100%. It's actually made me, being away from it's actually made me like more open to wanting to give information out and to get new young dudes in. Like while I was in, it was like, fuck everybody, dude. Like you don't deserve to be a Green Beret. Nobody deserves to be a Green Beret, right?
You're not gonna fucking make it. I don't deserve. When I was in, I was like, even I shouldn't have made it to be a PJ. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I'm not like that at all now. And coming from a family with a dad as a Green Beret and he's a Green Beret, like SOF in the SOF community means a lot to me. Now it does to a lot of people, right? But it's a core part of who I am. So yeah, now that I actually, and the best feeling, man, is like when I have. It's happened multiple times now where I have people email me and be like, hey, man, I just got selected at SFAS. I've been watching your videos for 6 months. They were a huge help. And it's like, dude, that's like the best feeling in the world of like, now I'm like, hey, man, you did that all on you, right? Like, but I do.
Oh, yeah. We say the same thing. Yeah.
It does mean a lot that like I was able to give you some guidance and help because I think I sort of, at the time I went through, there was no social media, man. There was nobody talking about how to become a Green Beret. Like that wasn't a thing. You just went and you learned, and like maybe some people had heard some rumors, right? But I sort of had the cheat code, and I had a dad as a Green Beret. So I sort of had what all these young dudes have with us now, with someone telling me like, here's what every single thing you're going to do. Here's what the first phase is. Here's what the second phase is. Here's the things you need to look out for. You need to be a good dude. Yep. Like, be a gray man, but not too much of a gray man. Like all those things that people typically learn the hard way, I've had. So now that I can sort of do that for other people, That's like a cool thing. You guys, I'm sure, do the same thing. So it always feels good to be able to do that as well.
It does. Getting those messages and somebody's like, hey, you really impacted my training, or I succeeded because of you guys. We all say the same thing. We're like, you, first of all, no, we didn't. We didn't do shit. You did that entire thing on your own. But I'll tell you what, it's humbling. And it's one of those things that I didn't think, when we started our podcast and we started talking to people through microphones and through the social media pages, same thing. We were like, first of all, why do you even care? Second of all, like, we'll tell you stuff, but it's not going to be pretty. We're not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not here to recruit you. I'm here, especially me. I'm here to give you the most eyes wide open look at this thing that I can possibly give you. Like, hey man, it's awesome. Being a PJ is great. It made me into a man. Like, PJ made me into the person that I am today. Pararescue has given me more than it's ever taken away. Yeah, but it's taken away a shit ton.
Yeah.
Like, it's given me a lot, but it's taken away just about even.
Well, and also, I try to bring the reality to it, and the fact that, like, the saying, like, it's not for everybody, and the soft world it's not for most people.
Right.
So, like, understanding what you're stepping into, one, not just because the standards are so high, but like the type of person it takes to make it through the qualification course. Only we know that, right? That we've been through, but everybody, it's one of those things like a gunfight. Everybody thinks they're going to be a badass in a gunfight until they get into their first gunfight. The same thing as these qualification courses. Everybody thinks they're mentally tough and thinks they're going to make it. And you find out real quick, it's a real subset of like borderline psychotic person that can push themselves through that much. And for you guys, I admire your guys' course because it's like ours. It's so long, right? So that's what I tell people. I tell all the young kids, go to Ranger Battalion, go to RASP. It's 8 weeks long. It's a ball smoker. If you're tough, you're going to make it through, right? You're not just going to make it through an SF qualification course or a PJ qualification course because you're tough. Like it's too long, right? Like 2 years will weed out anyone who's not, like I said, just like actually sort of psychotically like determined to complete this goal. So as sure you know, right? And again, I just want people to understand that before they decide to make that leap.
Yeah. We always say it's the best resiliency course we could have ever come up with, because for 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, the absolute fastest you're going to get through it. Man, it ate the events. I say this all the time. I could take any 18-year-old high school senior with no injuries, and I can train them to be able to pass selection. That's not the fucking point.
Right.
The point is the 20 years after selection. The point is the 15 years after the job. It's the 10 deployments after the job we're focusing on here. I don't give a shit that you can pass the pipeline. Thousands of people pass the pipeline.
Yeah.
That's not the point. That's not the end goal. And it's a hard thing to try to ingrain in people's minds. But I'm lucky to have people like you that exist. We're lucky to have people like you that exist that are saying the same thing. So, not being that silent professional, but being that quiet professional, not sugarcoating it or lionizing it or aggrandizing it. We need more people and voices.
So this is the big one, the whole silent, quiet professional thing. And, as much flack as I give the Navy SEALs, I give them credit. They figured out the promotional marketing side of the house 2 decades before the rest of us did.
Before everybody.
They don't have any problems getting people to try out to be Navy SEALs because everyone, Hollywood, so they can sift through. Whereas in SF, like, we tried to drill this silent, quiet professional thing so hard that nobody had any idea. Most people don't even know what a Green Beret is off the street. It's like, oh, is that like a Ranger? Is that like a Navy SEAL? It's like, yeah, so it's actual Army Special Forces. But that's because, like, we didn't make movies. Like, we don't. Well, now we're starting to, but there was no guys like me out there talking about this in public space. So it has hurt our retention pretty significantly now, as well as, because I'll tell you right now, still, I've got, of my era, right, everybody's about to retire or have just retired. And I got buddies that are bunch of former teammates that are team sergeants right now, right, towards the end of their career. And like one of my buddies, he's like, I got five guys on my team. 12-man ODA, I got 5 guys. Like, well, there's nobody else. Like, we're either going to have to shut down ODAs and reconglomerate, but we're not getting anybody out of the qualification course. And all of our era, we're done, man. Like, whether through injuries, through retirement, like the GWAT era is pretty much phasing out. And so we got to figure out something. We got to figure out something quick because, there's the path forward. The retention, like, is obviously because everybody's getting out because it's time to do GWAT. But again, we haven't been replacing the ranks, and it's really bad now. So I don't know, man. I don't know how it is for you guys in your unit, but in SF, we're hurting pretty bad right now for members for sure.
We always are. I mean, it's always a thing. The thing with us is we're so small. We feel, if we don't get 7 or 8 people through the pipeline in a year, that's a real effect. That's a real effect downrange. And we're doing the same thing. Like we're consolidating. The ST units are consolidating kind of East Coast and West Coast. The 2-2, brand new purpose-built building. It's gorgeous. It's in the middle. Guess what? They're moving. They're moving to fucking VN. But it's for those reasons. The numbers are constantly moving, and for us, if you don't put 10 people out, dude, that's 5% of the entire career field that we didn't graduate that year. That's really what it means for pararescue. If you don't graduate, when I was at school, when I was, teaching the schoolhouse, I was the ops dude at the schoolhouse for a while, an instructor down there. But when we would graduate a class, the students, to put it in perspective, we'd have a class graduating of 20, say 20 PJs. Be like, hey guys, you're one class of 20 PJs. We're going to graduate 60 PJs this year. We actually need 72. We didn't get 72. We got 60 in this given year. That's a 10th of the career field.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's active duty and that's Guard and Reserve. So the Guard and Reserve actually has like 65% of our personnel that work over there as PJs. The active duty guys, I mean, it's way less, like super less. So when you talk,
I didn't realize you guys' unit was that small.
It's like 500, dude. When I was when I started working at the 321st, there were 50 operators, 60 operators or something.
Wow.
And that's not OPSEC because it's listed and it's fucking 20 years old information. But there was like 10 PJs. Like there's really not that much. When I got to the 2-2, they had just started. They called it the Block 40 and Block 41, Block 30, 40, and 50 is basically like a programming number to get PJs at all the ST units. Say they just got them out to the 2-1. But there was 10 PJs total. There was a shit ton of controllers. That's it. Like when you look at the 38, the 48, and the 58, it's funny. You're talking about, deploying 20 ODAs, bro. We don't have that. We have, we could, maybe a couple teams. That's it. But
that's wild.
Neither here nor there. You're man, you're doing the Lord's work. You're getting people the information. You're going where those people are. And I think the worm, again, we talked about the pendulum kind of swinging. In the beginning, we got a ton of pushback. We got a ton of people like, oh, this isn't going to work. You guys don't know what you're doing. You're not going to meet anybody. Lo and behold, it turns out that there is a space for it. And there's a space for it because people want the mentorship from our generation as that generation goes away. And man, good on you for not being that quiet, the silent professional, but doing the quiet professional.
What I didn't realize is as much as you think like the space is sort of flooded with soft content, it's really not. That's what I've sort of learned.
It's really not.
Because again, for me, I did the YouTube channel as marketing, and again, now it's blowing up so fast. I'm like, I'm not providing anything fancy. It's just, but I realized like our generation sort of coming out, right? It's kind of the new, we're not new, right? But we're kind of new in the soft space for everybody who's used to it, right? You sort of had the old guard and guys like Tim Kennedy and Mike Glover have been around. Awesome dudes, still super prominent, but say they've been around Tijacos, right? Goggins, 10, 15 years. And now there's sort of like only a few guys who have been gotten out in the last couple of years who are doing stuff like this. So, and I think it's super interesting. I really like what you guys are doing with your new podcast with the War Room. I've watched those, and it's like super cool to see, because I'm always, I've got buddies, right, in each unit that I've worked with here and there. A couple buddies that are SEALs. One of my dudes I instruct with a former MARSOC guy. But like actually sitting down and like being able to talk with all the different soft units, I think is super cool because there's so much similarities, but there's also so much differences in what we did and how we do, which is cool.
Well, and it's funny just the way that it worked out, right? Like, Green Beret, MARSOC Raider, you got, myself as the PJ dude, and then we got a Navy SEAL with Jake, but we couldn't be any more different just in the way that we approach stuff. Like, I was an enlisted team guy that never left the teams. I was never good enough for that strategic position. I was never groomed to be the next E9. That was never a thing with me. They were like, you're good at doing this one thing. We're going to let you do that one thing. And I was like, fucking A, Cotton, got it. Great. I don't want an admin position anyway. But to, when Ben, Ben Pappas and I have that conversation, dude, he was a Raider commander. Like this guy was like dyed in the wool,
Right.
like force recon, and then ended up to be an officer. It's like to have the talk between the two of us, especially like that juxtaposition of that. It's pretty funny, but
yeah,
man, it's been fun, and man, we'll get you on over there too, because we love what you're doing. Obviously, we got Jay, and
I talked to
really small, man.
Talked to Jay. I think Jay's he's been trying to get me on, but the one you just did, and then one you're doing this Friday, my 18 Delta buddy I talked about, who I worked with so long, it's his retirement ceremony. So I'm trying to make the one 2 weeks after that. So good seeing you on that one.
Yeah. Good. Let's get you out there. Well, everybody go over to Valhalla VFT over on YouTube and on Instagram. Make sure you're following Nate everywhere he is. If you're in the local area in Oregon and you need some high level training, man, go hit him up. Make sure to find him, DM him. Nate, where can everybody find you? Where did I mess?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's my two big ones are my Instagram and my YouTube. Excuse me. And yeah, Valhalla VFT used to be Valhalla Firearms Training, but I had to change the name because Instagram and YouTube just shadow ban all my content because it's got the word firearms in it. So Valhalla VFT. If you haven't already followed me, then I do just a bunch of SF or software adjacent content for the most part. But yeah, man, appreciate you guys having me on, and talk to you guys soon, probably next couple weeks from now.
Hell yeah, brother. Anytime you want it, open invite. You come back on here, anywhere we are. So everybody else out there, thanks, man. Smash that like and subscribe button. Go over to Valhalla VFT, give him a follow. Make sure you're paying attention to his stuff. Same with us. Go to onesready.com. We appreciate you. That's it. Nate, thanks, man. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.